Hello, my name is James Donnelly. This is Medicare Talk. I am your host, founder of Safe Haven Insurance, your Medicare and health insurance safe place. I'm here today with Ron Roel, who has a pretty impressive resume. And we have a similar passion, actually. And I didn't really realize it until I did my homework on you. I mean, so I got into the Medicare industry because of my grandmother, because she fell. Somebody switched her plan. I had no idea. I was a life insurance agent at the time. I had no idea what Medicare was except for health insurance for older people. Right. And then the more clients that I sit with, the more I realize that nobody plans. Nobody knows how to tap into their resources. Right. And then you and I met at an NAIPC meeting, a National Aging in Place Council. And I did my homework on you, and we have very similar passions as far as bringing out information to the aging population. Right. Let's face it, there's 11,500 baby boomers a day turning 65, right? Right. So a little bit about you. Welcome to our show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So your resume is quite impressive.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, so I was a reporter and editor at Newsday for many years, but then toward the end of my tenure, I came out of the business desk. So I was a business reporter, and then I was sitting down actually one day listening to a webinar, well, actually in-person seminar.
They didn't have webinars back then, right?
Okay. I'm dating myself. They didn't. You're right. They didn't. But so it was with he was a financial planner talking with a lot of older people, and he said, well, how long do you think you're going to live? How long do you think your grandchildren are going to live? And then I'm thinking about it, I'm going, okay, that's a long time. Mm-hmm. So obviously, financial planning is essential if you're going to live longer. There's as you get into those older years, there's what they call the longevity bonus, and then longevity risk. Do you have enough money to live all these years? But in addition to that, there are all these other issues about, well, how do you live better? How do you live successfully? So that became sort of my passion. Like, wait a minute. And to your point, nobody plans. They don't think about it. As a matter of fact, I joke in some of these presentations. I say people have PDD, planning deficit disorder.
It's crazy. I started doing seminars with John Zanier, an estate planning attorney, because I see it every day. Nobody has a plan. Even my parents, and this is what I do. And I sit down with my parents and I try to, say, hey, let's go do an estate plan. Let's plan for the future. Like, everyone just procrastinates and they think tomorrow. Yeah. They're so busy living today that they don't want to plan for tomorrow. But then it's a question of quality of life as you age, because nobody's planning for anything. You need to sit down with that estate planning attorney. You need to sit down with that financial advisor at a young age. Right? I mean, it's not something you can do it in your 50s, but why? Like, do it when you're younger, right. Yeah. I agree 100%.
So by its very nature, it's a multi-generational thing. Mm-hmm. So you sit down and have what I call a family conversation with your kids. And sometimes the kids, push the parents, nudge them, because they're like, I don't want to bother my kids, they're busy. And it's like, no, you have to do this. And it happens, unfortunately, in a crisis, right? So in addition to my professional interests, it happened personally, and I didn't even realize at the time. It sort of, because it kind of preceded it. And unfortunately, my dad died suddenly. And it wasn't that young, but younger.
How old were you when your father passed away?
I was in my 40s.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But
still tragic. Yeah.
Still tragic. But no plan. Yeah. So my mother, there were 4 sons, and she, looked at us and said, well, you're the middle son, but you're closest. The older son lived, in South Carolina. So she said, you need to help me figure things out going forward. So, and just like you, my dad was a wonderful guy, but I didn't know where anything was. I had to figure it out, other than I knew the life insurance policy. That was it.
So he had a life insurance policy,
yes,
thank God.
Okay. Right, so he did have that. Was it enough? Barely, But the point is that life changes in an instant. So you have to really think about it ahead of time. You have to think about it for your family. And you have to balance. Yes, you do have to live for today, but think about tomorrow and the next day after that.
I mean, let's be real. Does anyone plan on dying?
Exactly.
My grandfather, God rest his soul, he was 77 years old.
Right.
He worked up until the day he went into the hospital.
Right.
And he used to tease me. It's in my bio. He used to tease me. And I said, Grant, when are you going to retire? And he used to say, when I die.
Right.
And I used to think it was because, he loved working. It was because he didn't plan for his future, and he had no choice. But he was a small business owner. He didn't have a retirement, and his business was his retirement, And let's face it, when he sold his business, he paid off his mortgage. Okay, great. Now what? Social Security alone is not enough to sustain a lifestyle on Long Island. It's definitely not. And I run into seniors all day long that just live on Social Security, and the quality of life is not there. So the whole point is to start planning when you're younger, So my grandfather passed away. He had cancer. They removed his lung. He didn't want to go for chemo, so they removed his lung. He got pneumonia in the hospital in his one good lung, and he passed away. He didn't have life insurance. He had a term policy which expired 3 years prior. Of course. And then at 77, it's so expensive. You can get life insurance at 77, but it's so gosh darn expensive so my grandmother had my grandfather's Social Security, and she had to work. She was a lunch aide until 3 years ago. 83 years old. How sad is that?
Yeah. Well, my father did some planning. Was it enough? Well, probably not. But he was also of that same era of and he literally did work until he just had a heart attack and died. Okay. His grandfather died at 85, never stopped working. So there were just, and I'm sure that I will do the same. I will plan, but I will plan to keep working in some capacity.
But I honestly feel like we're passionate about what we do.
Right.
And it's really, to me, I don't work a day. I don't work. I love what I do. I love coming in. I love talking, to my guests. I love talking to my clients. I love helping people.
Right.
So it's not work. And the beauty of it is now with technology, we could do it. I have clients all over the country. It's a Zoom call. It's a phone call. We could work from anywhere.
Right.
And we love what we do. So I could see that I told my wife already, we're never going to stop doing what I do because I love what I do. But it's a matter of choice, not correct. Not that you have to do it because you need to in order to afford to live. Really. And now with the cost of medications, especially on Medicare, it's crazy. Right. Some seniors have to choose whether they're going to eat or get their medication. Or some seniors that I speak to I don't get that every month because it's expensive. It's crazy. It's crazy. And then you learn things like, health savings accounts, HSAs. Right. And these are things that I didn't know about, but now that I'm in the business, I'm like, holy crap. You could leave money in that HSA until you're of Medicare age and it'll accumulate interest-free, tax-free, and then you could use that money and withdraw from that account in your retirement to help offset your medical costs. Right. It's like a no-brainer. So now now I want to get to people when they're younger, right? Not when they're at retirement age, because now once you start Medicare, you can't contribute anymore to an age. So it's I'm trying to get to this younger generation and just say, hey, you have to plan, and that's why I do what I do. So this podcast was supposed to be just about Medicare. And it morphed into a resource, kind of like you have an amazing show, 45 Forward, Right. So tell us a little bit about that, because we could go all over. Yeah, sure. I already see where this interview is going.
Yeah, so I have two things. I've got a Caregiving Navigator guide, but then the broader service is called 45 Forward. And it did come out of my feeling about people get to midlife and then they have no plan, particularly. Well, they might have some plan, but as you point out, you should start planning before you're 60, and so I figured.
Now I'm 45, so that's a little scary.
But the point is, you're involved in lots of life insurance, and there are certain things, for example, long-term care insurance, that's something people think it's for later, but you should be thinking about it in your 40s.
Because let's face it, when you're older, it's more expensive, and you have to medically qualify for it. So it's something, and it's a lot less expensive when you're younger.
Right. And so that's why I titled it, because I wanted people thinking about the second half of life to make it as vital and as productive as possible, but you need to start planning and thinking about it in your 40s. And I just picked 45. There were two reasons. One is I wanted to get ahead of the 50-yard line. And then staying with the sports analogy, somebody told me that I thought, well, this is sort of interesting. If you want to throw a football or baseball at the farthest distance, what's the angle? 45 degrees.
Oh.
So it gives you, so if you think about these things at age 45, around that, you have more options than if you did it later in life.
And these 45-year-olds are now taking care of their 65, 70-year-old parents, so it's a great demographic to target.
Right.
65 forward, I love it. And I love the angle of the trajectory, because that's even more impressive.
Yeah. So the show is a national show, and I have guests on, including you. Well, no, and some people I know locally, but you have a national exposure. Mm-hmm. And what you say affects people nationally. So I want to, it covers a whole variety of topics. I've done it for about 3 years now. They're about 180 episodes, and they cover very pragmatic ones to sort of inspirational ones about how people live, productive lives, well into their 60s, 70s, and 80s. So your life constantly changes. You have to adapt and change and think new things and have new careers. So there are things about how people change jobs. How do you do that? I know a lot of people who work 20 years as a fireman or a policeman or a teacher, and then they go off and they do something else because it's time for a reset. Exactly. The term is don't retire, rewire.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah,
that's great. So when is this show on?
The show's on live Eastern time, 3:00 Eastern.
Okay.
So that's
what every day.
No, every Monday.
Every Monday.
So
okay, 3 o'clock.
Every Monday.
And where would they find the show?
It would be, you just go on, if you just search 45 Forward, Google, it pops up.
Awesome.
But it's Voice America is the host platform, worldwide internet radio. And so if you just do voiceamerica.com and then search for 45 Forward, you'll find it that way too.
So that's amazing. So you were originally a Yale graduate, by the way, very impressive. I struggled at Farmingdale University, so I can't imagine what Yale was like, but that's very impressive. Newsday. Now, I heard you started the Act 2 of Newsday?
I did, yeah.
So it was kind of a similar kind of message, really, right?
That's right.
So, and I, as a kid growing up, I remember Act 2, and I never put the correlation there that it was for the second act of your life. I never did. Not until we met, and I was like, oh my God, Act 2. I thought it was like, after work in politics, like this was Act 2, like social. I thought it was like a social thing.
Okay.
I really did. But it was, so that was a very similar motivation to start the Act 2.
That's right. So I left, Newsday in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Basically because I guess it was time for a change. I wanted to do something a little bit different. I also wanted to, the newspaper business does a lot of valuable things in terms of alerting you to potential crises, potential dangers, problems in society. But I felt I wanted to do something a little bit more proactive in terms of helping people. So it's like once you, find out, oh my God, there's all this Medicare fraud. It's like, okay, well, what do you do about it? Or how do you prevent it? So I wanted to do something that was a little bit more, I guess with a positive spin to help people lead a better life.
So you wanted to be more proactive than reactive. And you wanted to get the message out there to be more proactive and less reactive.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Makes sense.
So that was the inspiration for it. And even now, it's funny that it's broadly still accurate, but as you just sort of pointed out, Act 2 is even kind of it's like, well, Act 2 and Act 3, and Act 4. I mean, it keeps evolving. So even within that Act 2, there are several chapters, to that act.
And it's not just living a longer life. It's living a longer life, but a healthier life.
Correct.
A thriving life. You don't want to live longer and not be well.
Correct. Yeah.
It's funny because I just watched a series on Netflix. It was about blue zones throughout the world. Not centennials, but I don't know. But there were people. Centenarians, right. Exactly. And how these people live. I mean, they live, they move, they work, they eat well until they die.
Right.
Really, into their hundreds.
Right.
And there's these blue pockets all around, and it's all about keeping moving. It's about exercise, eating well, and it's not like these people woke up and said, oh, I want to live a healthier life. It's just their geographical region that enabled them to, like in Italy, they would walk up to church every morning and then walk back down. They had stairs going up to, in their houses. There was a lot of stairs, so they were constantly walking. Their breads and pastas don't have gluten. Like we have gluten in our breads and pastas in the United States, you know.
Right.
It's weeding, it's walking, it's socializing. It's,
Right.
I mean, a lot of seniors now here in the United States, they're isolated.
Correct.
The children move away, and I see it with my mother.
Right.
My mother's sole purpose is being a mother. That was her life, being a mother. She is an amazing mother. She never put herself forward.
Right.
Never put herself first, and never did anything for herself. She did everything for everybody else. But then as I got older and I moved out, and her mother passed away and her father passed away, now she's at this strange crossroads.
Correct.
And she doesn't know what to do with herself. But thank God I have a granddaughter.
Right.
So that's like someone else for her. You know, my sister had a baby, so she's got a granddaughter.
Right.
So she's busy now with the kids, but it's not about her, because eventually, you know, the family starts to do their own thing, and then what's mom going to do? You know?
Yeah.
And now it's my biggest thing. She just got some friends. I mean, she's always had friends, but, you know, she just started going to bingo and going here and going there. And you want that quality of life. You really do. You want that socialization.
Right.
You know, and there's studies, right? That say if you're not socially stimulated, your brain's not as functioning, and you get dementia and, you know.
Yeah, there's the cognitive part of it, and there's the longevity piece of that you mentioned. So that there are studies too that if you lose that social connection, you don't live as long. You don't have that sense of purpose in life of being connected. And so there's a whole field developing called social health, realizing that this is a real thing that contributes to your health, which is being socially connected. And, you know, things have changed in the world where, you know, we live in the same communities. Part of these blue zones, you know, part of the success of them is that a lot of these people are in a community. They're connected. Yes. They're walking, but they know their neighbors, you know. But society has changed. People move around, they get jobs, our kids move everywhere. So how do you maintain that connection? You got to find ways to do it. And so even though people, when you ask people sort of in their 50s and early 60s, how do you want to age, get older? They say, I want to age in place. And you're like, okay, what you really mean is you want to age in community. Because being alone in your house when everyone's left is deadly.
Mm-hmm. But I see how we have changed. I remember growing up as a kid. Mm-hmm. We knew everybody in our neighborhood.
That's right.
Every house within a 2-mile, we knew who was there. Right. We were friends with their kids. We rode our bike. We went here. We were gone for the day. We knew all of our neighbors. Now my parents were still in the same block. I know less than a third of the neighbors. Yeah. I really do. And it's a little scary, but I think technology has a lot to do with it. People aren't out. They're not as social as they were. Right. People are more in their home, on the computer, on the TV. We're not as social, as we used to be. Right. I mean, right? Or
I agree. It's funny because we're social technologically, so we're in social media, but that doesn't really connect you. It doesn't get you outside where you're. That personal connection really makes a difference because you're not really connected online. Mm-hmm. And I think that social media has been an interesting thing. I mean, the internet's been great, but social media has been a mixed bag because you're not really connected with people. Your kids aren't really connected. You're not sure what you're seeing. Mm-hmm. You're not. Are people really happy, or what do they do? You don't know anything. When you're out, as you said, and it happened with me as well. Grew up in a neighborhood. Mother got tired of you, said, outside, get outside.
Yeah.
But
be home by dinner, right?
Exactly. And it was, that's exactly what it was. And sadly, when I had my kids, I couldn't do that. It was a different environment.
It was a different environment, but I always say, was it really different, or do we just know more because of social media? Like, as soon as there's a helicopter or an ambulance drives by my house, I get an alert from a mom's group on Facebook or the Ring. Everybody's chatting on the Ring network now. They want to know what the ambulance is for, what the helicopter is for. So I think we know more, as far as protecting our children. So we want to keep them safe. I mean, who knows? I think
we do know more. But to your point, they're not outside meeting people.
They're not.
And they're not. And
we don't want them to be.
Well, But we knew all the people.
I don't even let my kids play in the front. I'm like, get in the backyard,
Well, sadly, that is part of what's happened. You do worry about, there have been incidents, so you do worry, but you need to somehow recreate that, connection. And I think we're at a cusp now where we're kind of getting like, and that was, came out when it was my Caregiving Navigator, which is realizing that one of the specific consequences of this change in society was, how do you care for your parents? In the old days, you can do it as you are doing it. It's harder. We are busier. In most families, the two working parents, so it's not that easy. But we need to find ways to do it, and we need to get community supports and recognize that we need to do this as a team. But it's a community effort, yeah.
Well, I love this Caregiver's Handbook, and I wish I would have known about it 2 years ago. And I wish I would have known about the resources that I know now, the NAIPC.
Right, exactly.
I really wish I knew about these things when I first started my journey with my grandmother, and I didn't. I had to figure it all out myself.
Yeah.
And now, here you go. You've created this handbook for caregiving.
Right.
So let's talk about that. I know your motivation was similar to, the 45 Forward and the Act 2. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I think to your point, when you started doing this, what you saw, what was the biggest problem was an information gap. So that's people didn't have the information enough time. So, as I was going through this with my mother, realizing that, I went, from beginning to end, from the planning stage. My father passed away. Then things she could age in place. She wanted to age in place. She wanted to be in her home. Did not want to go to a nursing home. I said, okay, well, I don't want you either. But then as she got older, things happened. We were able to keep her at home. But in order to do so, we needed to think about estate planning so that she could have the money to do that. Mm-hmm. We did go through, planning trusts so that she could, preserve her assets. And then went all the way through to, end of life issues. Okay. So what I was trying to do was basically give, people some guidance and information. So there's a lot of, basically basic template text. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, Medicare. So my goal is not I'm not a Medicare expert like you.
Okay.
Okay. I'm an expert in the experts. So the idea is I say, all right, here's a basic outline of what Medicare is. These are the programs, these are the basic availability, these are the enrollment period. Now you want to do this? Talk to someone like James.
Okay.
Because, you do need that personal touch. So I think it's very valuable in terms of giving people like, okay, this is where I'm headed. These are basic questions. And then, also, if you need to talk to an advisor or a senior advisor or an elder law attorney or different kinds of experts, I give basic checklists. Okay, start with these questions. You'll probably have a lot more, but at least when you go in there, you're not going in cold. You have an idea of how to start the process. So it's kind of a starter kit in many ways. And it goes through, so it goes through planning, goes through aging in place independently, aging in place with some assistance. Then if you need to go to some facility, for more support, and then the end of life journey. And then the final chapter is called Caring for Yourself, which is an issue, as you know, with a lot of caregivers because
it's the whole airplane theory.
Yep,
I mean, you
exactly.
have to put your oxygen mask on first before you could help somebody put theirs on. I mean, and we neglect ourselves.
Exactly.
We really do. And we're like my mother, like other mothers that I know, like other people that I know, they're so busy caring for others that they don't have any self-care. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, and you can burn out easily. And the point is, you say, if the caregiver burns out, everything's done. Then everything falls apart. So it's really critical. And actually, I say at the beginning of the book, I said, listen, the book is about how to care for others. So that's the main part of it. But I would suggest that you read the last section first. And then I would.
Do you say that in the book in the beginning?
Do say that,
you
yeah.
do? Oh, that's amazing.
And then I say, and by the way, as you get into each new chapter, let's read that again. Because you're in a different place, there are different considerations, you need a new family conversation. Things change. So it's a dynamic process. And people say, well, but it's, so why do you have a book? Why don't you just have it on the web? I'm like, I do it on the web. I don't have a full guide on the web, but I do have it's called caregivingnav.com.
Okay.
So people can get sort of updates and they can get some ideas from there. But I learned from talking to a lot of caregivers, they like having something in front of them. So they can look at it and they can say, you know what? My brother-in-law, Joe, he could really use this section. So you could make a copy of it. Make a copy of it. I don't care. Copyright. Give them help. Give them help. Let them look. Give them a checklist. Give them the questions. My basic philosophy is this is a business, but it's also a legacy. Like you, I want to help people. That is my guiding principle. So when people say, and I have everyone, I have professionals like you in it, references to how do you find experts in the health field, insurance, finance, as well as agencies, government agencies, nonprofits. Because when you're in this space, it's like, I don't care where I get the help. I need the best help. So I want to give resources in every sector of society. Okay. And then, I put a lot of effort into this. I've been working on it really 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
And so, I do sell it on Amazon. But when people say, well, you deal with all these other nonprofits, I go, well, are you a nonprofit? And my line is always, okay, I'm a not much profit. but I deal of value, so I'm not going to just say I'm going to give it away. But I do feel passionately, just like you do. You want to help people. Yeah. They need help.
They need help. Absolutely, they do. This is an amazing resource, really, and I love that you're so passionate about it, and your heart's really in it. And you've learned from your father passing. I've learned from my grandmother, my grandfather. These are all things that kind of pushed us in a trajectory to be. I mean, when you graduated Yale, did you ever see yourself doing what you're doing?
Absolutely not. And that's why I tell younger people who say, well, what am I going to do? I'm like, you're going to do a lot of things. Don't worry about. Have like a 3-year plan. Your career's going to evolve. You didn't think you were going to be doing this.
No, never in a million years. And if someone said to me I was going to be doing Medicare and working with seniors when I was 20 years old, I would have said, you're out of your mind. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. But with accident and intention, you say, well, I didn't expect that, but okay, but let's do something with it. So, I often talk, I've done a lot of multi-generational seminars, and I keep telling people, like, don't worry. And you will be doing something different, but what you do younger will inform you, So what you did with your family business sure taught you a lot about how people think, what they need, how to serve a customer, how to talk with people.
Oh, I always say that everything that happens when we're younger molds us to where we are, later.
Yes.
And really, it molds us as a person. It molds us knowledge-wise. It really is so I always say to people, like, what would you have done differently? And I'm like, I don't, maybe this, but I kind of like where I am, so it's difficult to say, I really wouldn't change anything. I love my children. I love my education. I enjoy the people that I've met, and some people I didn't enjoy so much, and they're not there anymore, but it taught me a lot to be where I am today. Right. So it was just like, things evolve. You evolve, and you don't know. And I didn't have the intention of doing this. Right. And I love it. And I get paid to do what I love. It's amazing. I don't charge for my services. I get paid from insurance companies. Right. And if you're, if you are where you are and you're in a good place, I leave you there. Like, it doesn't make a difference to me. I work with policemen, I work with teachers that have Medicare, medical for life, but I help them. I sit down with them, I enroll them in A and B, and I let them go. Like, that's it. And they said, why do you do that? Somebody said to me, why do you do that? You don't make any money. I said, but I love being a resource for people. I do, because they're going to say, oh, that guy, James Donnelly, he helped me. They're going to tell their friends about them. Right. If you have any questions about Medicare, about life insurance, about anything, call long-term care, call James Donnelly. And I just love being a resource. And there's so much non-pay stuff that I do just to kind of help people. It's kind of like what you do.
Yeah, and I think there is a level of credibility when you do it that way, where you get compensation, but it's not like, well, okay, if you don't want to go into Medicare Advantage, then I can't help you. So I'm trying to serve you the customer.
And Medicare Advantage plans aren't for everyone.
Right. Yeah. Right. But I mean, even if you're not getting paid, being in that position where you say, well, I'm trying to do the best for you. You're, I guess, what they call, a fiduciary. You're what's best for the client, and that's important. And in a similar way, people say to me, "You've got this podcast. You're giving people a lot of exposure. Do you can charge your guests?" And I'm like,
No. I don't charge my guests either. I mean, I really just trying to get the resources out there.
I can't. That people need to trust me that I'm having people on my show that I think provide value to my audience. It's not pay to play. I'm not going to put you on there because you pay me. And they need to understand. My audience needs to have that trust that I'm doing it because I think there's a value in this client.
And all of my guests, I see a value in what they do. And that's why I interview them, because I want you to be a resource for my audience.
Right.
I don't like that pay to play. And honestly, this was supposed to be a Medicare podcast just to inform my audience about Medicare, and it morphed into something completely different because I wanted my guests to be able to get their message out because they're a resource for my audience.
Right. Yeah. Well, Medicare is still, the heart of what you do, but you've realized that there's a lot of context to this.
Oh my goodness.
It's not just Medicare, it's within a broader...
Every day I sit with somebody, and I'm just like, okay, they didn't plan, or they didn't think about it.
Right.
And it's confusing. There's a lot of moving pieces. And that's why this Caregiver's Handbook is such an amazing, unbelievable resource, because there are so many moving pieces. And it's kind of like you're the playmaker, and you kind of just put all the pieces here and say, when you face this situation with mom or your husband or whatever, and you need this resource, and that's really great. And that's why I joined the NAIPC.
Right.
That's why I help Eileen Carini out with Pulse, just because I want to be a resource for my clients and for my listeners. And I just want to get the message out there. There's people there that are resources to you that you don't even know about. And I didn't know about the NAIPC. I had no idea. There's a national organization. Right. You could just call them and say, hey, I was talking with Laura LaFauci the other day. She was on the phone with the water company because some lady, they charged some lady the wrong thing. They didn't credit her payment, and they just kept on blowing her off. So Laura LaFauci was on the, she's the chairperson for NAIPC the local chapter, and she was on the phone with them to get the bill taken care of. Like, there are resources for people, and nobody knows about them, And this handbook is an amazing resource, and your podcast is an amazing resource, And this podcast is an amazing resource. I mean, we just have to get the message out there. Right. We really do.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to keep doing it. People say, well, and like I just say, keep going, keep doing it. It's not a one-time thing. And you have to do it on multi-channel. So people, I've got a book, I've got a website, we have belong to these organizations, and with this sort of thing where it's not, the trick is, as you well know, people don't come to you because there's always this equation of the important versus the urgent. So people don't see this as urgent. So they always put it off, until it becomes urgent, and then might be too late, or it's certainly a lot of your options are closed.
Yes.
So you have to kind of combine those two and say, yes, it is important and it may be urgent, which is why you shouldn't put it off until it is a crisis.
And if you use that sports analogy, right? A football coach doesn't just kind of throw their players on the field and say, do what you want. They study the team that they're playing before they go to the game.
Right.
They know what plays they're going to do before the game. And then every situation, they already know in their playbook what play they're going to run in that defensive formation. They already know.
Right.
So, and it's like life. We already know what can happen. We already know the worst case scenario. Why not plan for it?
Yeah. And also you need that other, famous word, which is resilience, right? So you have a plan A, but things happen. So think about, having a plan B and plan C. You got to think about that kind of flexibility.
Sometimes you got to make the audible call,
Make an audible. No, exactly. But you got to have some tools in place to do that. So, you have to have things like a healthcare proxy, and you got to have a living will and all the things you've done with.
And that's why I partnered up with John Zenner, and we're doing seminars. We have seminars for the next couple months. Just to talk about planning, because nobody plans. I mean, it's simple stuff, and it's not expensive. It's really not, you know. I mean, some attorneys take advantage of you, but, you know, John and a lot of other, attorneys that I work with are very reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, and we know, because it's planning for time that people don't really want to think about. But as you point out, you could do very well if you plan. You can do better. And, you know, as a matter of fact, the tagline for my podcast is make the second half of life even better than the first.
Love it.
And you can have and to that, so I say, well, this is not just about it's not a survival guide, it's a thrival guide. So you want to have people...
Thrival guide, I love it.
You want to basically say, enjoy life, you can be productive. And so many people I've interviewed, I'm like, they're doing amazing things. And they're doing amazing things. Yes, they're older, but they are wiser. Mm-hmm. They've learned a lot. You know, they know what to do, what not to do, what not to waste time. They're focused, they're purposeful, and they know that having purpose like you will actually make you live longer and better.
So true. And how do our listeners find you again?
So you can find me, voiceamerica.com, 45 forward is the podcast. You can, my email is simple. I love, just ron.roel, R-O-E-L, @gmail.com.
Okay.
And you can find
show the listeners.
Yeah, so you can see the Caregiving Navigator is on Amazon.
It's a nice sized book.
Yeah, and so I wanted it this size so people could open it up and make copies and stuff like that. And the thing is, it's self-published on Amazon. Why is that? Because, as I just said before, things change. So I update this every year.
Wow. So
that you can have the fresh resources. You can't, this is not. This is the wrong website,
Yeah.
And that's why I have the website too. It's so you can see the latest updates there, but also that I want to keep it fresh for people and there aren't a lot of changes, but I want to be able to have the most recent changes. Yeah.
Like Medicare, the changes every year.
That's right.
That's why I have to get recertified every year, because CMS changes the rules and regulations every year. Exactly. The companies change their plans every year.
Right.
Right. That's amazing. Well, I really enjoyed having you. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to being on your show today at 3 p.m. So his show, 45 Forward, is Mondays at 3 p.m. on the Voice of America. You could just Google 45 Forward and it'll come up.
Right.
I love it. Ron, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.